All right, so I know I'm a little late with this review. I'm sorry about that, but then again, I was at the Austrian Grand Prix watching Formula One in real life when this movie came out, which, by the way, was a great experience. I made a vlog about it, and if you want to check that out, it's in the description. But after that, we had a week long vacation in Greece, so I was still not really able to see it. So I finally saw the movie yesterday. Um, and yeah, I am, of course, going to talk about this as a very long time Formula One fan. I've been watching the sport for almost 20 years. I started to watch when Lewis Hamilton came into the sport in 2007, and I watch everything about it. I even watch the support series, Formula 2, Formula 3. I watch qualifying. I watch an occasional free practice, the build up, the post race business. I really love this sport. It's my favorite sport. And as someone who has been a very long time Formula One fan, I really hated this movie. I'm sorry to say that. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish this movie was more geared towards Formula One fans, but unfortunately, this is more geared towards the general audience who doesn't know much about Formula One. So the general audience seems to really love this, but I have seen several Formula One fans who really did not like this movie. So yeah, I'm one of them. So if you don't know much about Formula One, I would still recommend you watch my review because I have a lot to say about this movie, about the inaccuracies, because I can't watch this movie and not think about the inaccuracies. I know this sport too well to be like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So, yes, I'm going to be the actually guy because I kind of have to be. I am unable to turn off that part of my brain. So, I still think I have a lot to say about this movie that some people might be interested in. If you're not, well, then you should probably turn off the review right now. Also, spoiler warning, I'm going to talk in depth about what happens in this movie. But yeah, it's very necessary that I do. Now, if you follow me on Letterboxd and you've seen the grade that I give the movie, it's not as bad as I'm gonna talk about it. And that's mostly because there's some credit that I will give to this movie, and it's mostly the technical elements. Like, this movie is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who also did Top Gun Maverick, and in that regard, he did a very similar job to Top Gun Maverick, putting actual people in cars, putting cameras on the cars to make it look as realistic as possible. So that's a very cool element about the movie that I thought made the movie visually look very interesting. Also, the sound is very good. Like, I just went to a race myself hearing the cars in real life, and I think the sounds that they have, well, considering they are actually using the real cars and the real drivers from the real world, makes it very realistic, and that was cool. So in terms of like visually and audio wise, it looked and sounded good enough to me. So in that regard, I was like, okay, that's cool, that works. And also, well, Hans Zimmer's score works for the movie. Of course it does. It's Hans Zimmer. What I'm gonna say against the guy? So those were elements of the movie that I have to give credit because, besides the fact that I'm a Formula One fan, I'm also a big movie fan. I've seen a lot of movies. I have some idea of what goes into making a movie like this. And I can imagine that, they did a lot of things to make this movie look as good as it does. Then I'm like, okay, I have to give credit to that, of course. But what I will not give credit for is essentially how they portray the sport that I have loved for so long and that I have been really engraved in, because I very much feel they're at times just taking the piss. The fact that, a 50 something guy can come into the sport and perform well, that doesn't really happen. And that is essentially where my criticisms start, because the idea is that Sonny Hayes, played by Brad Pitt, once drove in Formula One. He was pretty good, but he had a massive crash trying to battle against Senna. And of course, Senna is, as far as most of the Formula One world is concerned, the best or one of the best drivers of all time. So considering he was going up against him, okay, credit, But then what they do is they use archive footage of a crash that actually happened, where a driver is lying, completely still on the circuit, because the archive footage is from a driver who actually died. And I'm like, why are we using this? I feel it's kind of in poor taste that we're just using archive footage of a driver that actually died to say, oh no, but he actually survived the crash. I feel that doesn't sit right with me, to be fair. So after that crash, Sonny just does whatever the hell he wants. He goes like gambling, he races in some other series, and then at the beginning of the movie, we see that he is racing in the 24 Hours of Daytona, and that he is actually the big reason that they're winning the race. So they win the race, yay, all good. And then, well, it shows that he still has some racing experience, that he's still able to do something. So then his former teammate, Ruben, played by Javier Bardem, comes to look him up and he's like, I want you in my Formula One team. And the thing is, Sonny is well into his 50s already, and there is not a driver this day in Formula One that's over 43, and already 43, by the way, that's Fernando Alonso, is considered very old these days. Now, to be fair, Fernando Alonso is able to still be there because he's actually a two-time world champion, and he's regarded as one of the best drivers of the modern day of Formula One. He is really all that good. If you haven't raced in Formula One for 30 years, the cars are completely different, and you can't just jump in and do well. It's just not how it works. Formula One is a completely different beast than it was 30 years ago, and in that regard, I feel it's just taking the piss. But also, then we have Ruben explain to Sonny, like, oh, but there have been examples of older drivers in Formula One. And what I find funny is that he doesn't use the example of the only 50-plus-year-old guy who's ever won a race. No, he's using examples of other real-life Formula One racers who didn't win a race at the age that he is claiming it. So this was very confusing to me. Why are you using false info in a movie that you want to make realistic when there is a realistic stat that you can pull up? You can literally say, hey, there was this 53-year-old guy called, I think it was Luigi Fagioli. He won a race at 53. So if he did it, you can do it. But they don't use that example. They just fabricate something. And I don't really understand why they do that. And also, we do have to remember, the time that he won that race was in 1951. It was when Formula One was very new and, people could win it if they were old. But we haven't had someone win a race above the age of 40 since 1994. So is it a realistic stat to say, oh, when you're in your 50s, you can still win a race? No, because it hasn't happened in, almost 75 years. And even above 40 has not happened in over 30 years. So why is that a realistic stat to pull up if you want to, inject realism into this movie? Because that's all I'm getting from this movie. They want to be as realistic as possible. And I'm just like, you can make a completely fictional story. You don't have to stick to realism. But, they do whatever the hell they want. At times they're like, let's do a fictional thing, and at times they're like, let's do a realistic thing. And that just clashes to me, and I don't understand why they're doing it. And what's even more upsetting is that pretty much the entire F1 grid, in terms of drivers and people surrounding it, was involved with this movie. There are actually 3 people credited as producers: Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff, and the CEO of Formula One, Stefano Domenicali. 3 people involved in F1 were involved with making this movie. They were right there to essentially help make this movie as realistic as possible and as accurate as possible, and we still have inaccuracies that make the sport look more like a joke. And I'm like, why is this even happening? But anyway, of course, Sonny decides to join the team. He's like, okay, let's test this car. And they test it on, a quiet testing day in Silverstone, where first the guy who has been with the team for a while now, the rookie, JP, he goes to drive the car and he has an okay lap. At the end it doesn't go too well, but the lap is okay. And then they're like, okay, let's put Sonny into the car. Now, usually how these tests work is that essentially you just drive a couple of laps and slowly gain confidence. None of that. With this test, it's like, oh, he drives out of the pits, and the moment that he goes for a lap is instantly the lap, because we can't bother with, too many laps. We can't indicate that he's done a couple of laps. No. It's just that first lap is the one to do it, and that is the one that actually is good enough to be within the time that they required of him. Again, this is not how Formula One works. But, we can't be bothered with accuracies because we want to make a realistic racing movie, except when, it's inconvenient. So there's that. But, that's not even the biggest bullshit that's going on about the entire situation. No, the biggest bullshit is that they say, well, we need to win a race. This has never been a thing for new teams in Formula One. If you are new to Formula One, the thing that you're aiming at is a point-scoring finish, or just to finish the race, because Formula One is really cutthroat and it's very difficult to even get on the podium. To give an example, in 2016, we had a new team called Haas F1. They have been racing for 10 seasons now. They haven't even gotten a podium, so let alone a win. They have just been racing. They have had a couple of successes, and usually they're actually quite happy just to get like a 5th or 6th place. That's good enough for them, because for small teams, that is a good result. That's what you're aiming at. Considering what they're explaining in this movie, Apex Grand Prix has been in the sport for 2.5 years, and they haven't scored a single point, which means not a single top 10 finish in a main race or a top 8 finish in a sprint race. By the way, did I mention that the sprint races are a thing in Formula One? Well, the movie definitely doesn't. So that's the thing. Sprint races? No. We're not going to bother with that. And in addition to that, this movie also doesn't bother with qualifying, because when we see the first race at Silverstone, it's just the race. We never saw any kind of qualifying. Now, to be fair, it's also because the two drivers are at the back of the grid, so qualifying probably wasn't really that interesting anyway. But this will come later in the movie, and I'll harp on it when we get to that point in the movie. But yeah, the first race is at Silverstone. Sonny is starting from the back. He pulls some antics about, having a slow warm-up lap, so he warms up the tires very well, which means he has a good first lap. Then he manages to activate DRS on the first lap. That's not how that works. DRS comes into play after 2 or 3 laps. I'm not entirely sure what year they're going for with this movie, because a couple of years ago, DRS is activated on the 3rd lap, now it's on the 2nd. It's definitely not on the 1st. In no way, shape, or form is DRS already activated on the 1st lap, but the movie makes it look like it's already activated on the 1st lap. But that's not even the biggest issue that I have with it. They started the race on soft tires. Soft tires, in I think 20 out of 24 races, are not really used. At least not to start the race, because usually if you start on softs, you will be losing pace after like 5 laps already, and you will have to make a pit stop within 10. But this movie is like, oh no, they drove for 20 laps. No fucking way that is happening. For the record, the full length of the Grand Prix is 52 laps. So 20 laps is almost half distance. On softs, absolutely not. That's not happening. That really irked me. But, none of that really mattered, because after the pit stops, the two teammates clash, and it's like, oh, well, they clashed. Okay, well, whatever. By the way, I saw that in the trailer. The trailer did spoil certain things for me, because, I know F1. I recognize the tracks. So I knew that would happen. I was just waiting for it. So, there was no tension for me throughout that entire race. But then at the next Grand Prix in Hungary, Sonny all of a sudden decides to be nice to JP and help him out. And how does he help him out? He starts to crash into other cars on purpose to cause a safety car to make sure that JP can get a good result. Now, this is completely illegal. And considering that, he's literally radioing it to his team, those radios are monitored by the race director, and the race director should be able to pick that up and be like, okay, you should be banned for a race or entirely from the sport. Because we actually had a similar thing happen back in 2008 at the Singapore Grand Prix. It's called Crashgate. It was a huge incident where the Renault team decided to take matters into their own hands and essentially have one of their drivers crash on purpose, causing a safety car, making sure that his teammate Fernando Alonso won the race. And a year later, Nelson Piquet confessed to having crashed the car on purpose, and after that, he never drove an F1 car ever again. And the team boss, who was, the mastermind behind it all, was also banned from the sport, at least for a very long time. He's back now, but it's been almost 20 years. So essentially, if you do something like that, you will get banned from the sport. So what Sonny is doing in this race, and by the way, he doesn't just do it in this race, he also does it for pretty much the rest of the season, and his teammate is also helping with that. They should both be banned, the team should be banned, and this is not a good way to show F1, because, again, they're just taking the piss out of it. Oh, you can crash on purpose causing a safety car. Shut up. But anyway, because of all those antics, of course, JP finally scores a point for the team, which, by the way, that should be celebrated. Sonny makes it out to be not a big deal, but I'm like, yeah, no, this is a big deal. I don't care who you are. If you have not scored a point in 2.5 years in Formula One, and you finally are able to do that, then you should celebrate that. I don't care if it's not the win or it's not the podium. You should celebrate. But then the movie does another weird thing for us F1 fans, and that is just disregard the regular Formula One calendar. Because the thing is, we had Britain, and after Britain we have Hungary, and then you should have Belgium. Belgium is actually moved way later in the year. It takes place, I think, after Japan. And the next race is Monza, which is not the case in the calendar for the past couple of years. I actually went back in 2024, 23, 22, and 21. It was all Great Britain, then Hungary, then Belgium, then the Netherlands, then Italy, Monza. So, why they just jumped to Monza and placed the Netherlands and Belgium later in the year where it doesn't make sense, I don't really know why they decided to do that, because also there was actually a thing a couple of years ago about, grouping races together in the same part of the world. Usually, we have the summer season in Europe, and we go through all the European races, and Belgium is very much a part of the European races. And then, after they move out of Europe, they go to the flyaway races to, America, where we have the United States Grand Prix, the Mexican Grand Prix, the Brazilian Grand Prix. Those are together because of logistical reasons. So I don't understand why for the movie they decided to split up the calendar and do it in a different way, because the things that happen on certain circuits, they don't matter in terms of the circuits. None of the circuits are really specific, there's a specific corner that we need to focus on. No, none of that. If there's an incident somewhere, you could do that at any track. That doesn't matter. And for us F1 fans, it's just a bit weird that they switch up the calendar. So I'm like, why did you switch the calendar if you could have just kept it normal? It's weird. It doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, the next race is Monza in Italy. And for some reason it rains there at the end of the race. Now, does it rain very often at Monza? Not really. But it has rained there in the past, so I suppose that's not the most unrealistic thing. The most unrealistic thing about the rain falling is that people stay out on dry tires, on slicks. I've seen many races where rain has hit the track. The amount of rain that was falling, there's no way that you're able to finish the race because they have 7 laps left. If it was 1 lap, I can understand that. But they had 7 laps left and the rain was falling hard. It was getting really wet. There's no way that you're going to be able to finish it on slicks. So that really pissed me off. And yeah, was I surprised that JP crashed? Not really. I was actually surprised that he crashed that late, He was actually to go a full lap before he crashed. I'm like, he should have crashed the first turn the moment that it started raining. But, oh well, he crashed. So he's out for a couple of races. In the meantime, Sonny does well because, the team has a very special new upgrade. This I'm very okay with. This actually happens all the time. It happened a couple of years ago when McLaren all of a sudden had a very good upgrade and were able to fight at the front. And actually this year as well with Sauber. Sauber had an upgrade where, the last race last weekend, they got a podium. So I can completely believe that, a big upgrade, a special upgrade like this one can really help the team perform well. But then JP gets back into the car and they still crash into one another, and it seems like they're still not okay. So what do they decide to do? They decide to have a poker game together the evening before the Las Vegas Grand Prix. This again makes no sense because the evening before the race, there's qualifying. And this is what I was talking about. This movie does not care about free practice on a Friday, another free practice on a Saturday, qualifying on the Saturday. No, none of that. They never even hint at it because, for the general audience, they won't understand that. But qualifying is, especially these days, is extremely important. Setting the grid for the race is very important. Also considering that the two Apex Grand Prix cars, I believe they were starting 5th and 6th. They were starting quite high up because they're actually challenging for the lead at the beginning of the race. So I'm like, why are they gambling, playing poker on the evening that they should be qualifying? But that's not even the thing that pisses me off the most. The thing that pisses me off the most is the fact that they're drinking. We see them drinking alcohol. That is something that may have happened back in the 70s. Like, we actually see this in the movie Rush. By the way, Rush, now that's a good F1 movie. Watch that one. But back in the 70s, James Hunt, he was kind of a reckless guy. He smoked, he drank. Nowadays, none of that happens. Back then, that happened with Formula One drivers. So that's why when I watch Rush, that all makes sense to me because that's how it was back then. Nowadays, they're way more serious about it. F1 drivers are supposed to be fit. And the evening before an F1 race, you're not going to drink. You can drink after the race. If you got a podium, you will drink some champagne, sure. But other than that, Formula One drivers are very, healthy, very much focused on keeping a healthy body, not drinking alcohol, at least not the evening before a race. So yeah, that really pissed me off. But then, of course, they make up because they figured out that their dads died when they were the same age.
Martha! What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
But then when they get to the race, there apparently something about an illegal part. This makes Sonny very mad, and he once again crashes. The amount of crashes in this movie are insane. It is way more than regular crashes in regular F1. I suppose, they're trying to sensationalize it, make it way more exciting than real life. But again, I feel like if a person is to watch this movie and they're like, oh, let's watch a Formula One race. If you watch an average Formula One race, you might be bored because it's not as exciting as this movie. There won't be as many crashes. You need to very specifically look up certain races that had, a lot of crashes, a lot of drama happen, but the average race will not be this crazy. But then we go to the final race at Abu Dhabi, and this result was spoiled for every Formula One fan, I feel, because back in 2023, when they shot the podium, they essentially just swapped out the winner, Max Verstappen, for Sonny, who, by the way, Max Verstappen completely disappears in this race, because the funny thing is, he started from pole. You see that he's starting from pole, and at the end of the race, he's just gone, completely gone, because, well, they had the exact same podium, just with Max swapped with Brad Pitt, and they posted that picture everywhere. They posted it on the Formula One site, they posted it on all their social media. This picture was everywhere, and it was the final race, and it is essentially, the moment that he finally wins the race. Now, I think, pretty much everyone could have figured out that he would have won the race, but the way that the end plays out with the drama of like, oh, we have a red flag, and then we restart, and Lewis is actually in the lead, and like, Sonny lets JP through to challenge Lewis for the win, I knew that they would crash, because I've seen that picture. I remember the picture, I'm like, oh yeah, but Lewis and JP are not on the podium, so they're going to crash, and then Sonny is going to win ahead of Charles and George. I knew that, So, yeah, spoiler for the end of the movie. Thank you, F1, for spoiling that 10 million times all over your social media and your official F1 website. Thank you. That was great. And then at the end of the movie, Sonny does what every Formula One driver aspires to do. He goes to drive the Baja 1000. You know, most Formula One drivers, they go into endurance racing. Considering that Sonny won the 24 Hours of Daytona, I would think he would want to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. No. Or maybe go into IndyCar. A lot of retired Formula One drivers go into IndyCar and perform quite well. No. No. What he's going to do is drive a dune buggy around some sand. Yeah, no, that's what Formula One drivers do after they just won a race. So, yeah, what else can I say? This movie sucks. I really hated it. I understand why the general audience likes the movie fine, because they don't really know about the inaccuracies or the fact that the movie completely shits on a sport that I have cared about for so long. But I've seen that a lot of Formula One fans, they're not the biggest fan of this movie. So, yeah, as a movie, I would give this a 5 out of 10. If I am to judge this as a Formula One fan, I'll give it a 2 out of 10. This was a piss poor excuse for a movie. This is a complete dump on the Formula One sport that I have loved for so long, and I'm honestly quite embarrassed for this movie. And I wish that it didn't do well, that people didn't like it, but unfortunately, it's what it is. So anyway, I just hope you like my rant on this movie. If you are interested in, actual Formula One content, check out the vlog that I did about my Austrian Grand Prix. That was a great experience. And it's funny how essentially I had two very polarizing experiences about one weekend where the two happened, The movie came out that weekend and I went to the Grand Prix. The Grand Prix, going there, seeing everything in real life, one of the best experiences ever for me as a Formula One fan. The movie, one of the worst experiences. So very polarizing results. But yeah, that was that. So please like the video. Let me know your thoughts on the movie. Let me know if you're an F1 fan or not and what you think based on that, based on what I said as well. Now, usually I'm not a Formula One channel. Of course, I am a Star Wars channel. The reason that I did the Formula One videos is because I just really wanted to do them, and I thought they would be interesting to a certain audience, but I want to get back on track with Star Wars, most notably the project behind me, Lego Jedha City, that I've been really enjoying, and apparently the viewers have been really enjoying it because they got a lot of views. I've gained a bunch of subscribers, so I want to get back to that, but I am sorry to say to the people who've been waiting for that, I can't continue that until I have my orders in. I placed 2 new orders with a whole bunch of parts that should get me very far along the way with what I'm doing, but I am still waiting for them. I placed them on Monday, it's now Thursday, and I have no idea where they are. My postal service app is saying that they have received the package, but they can't give me an estimate delivery time at all. I got one yesterday, and then that was postponed, and I don't know when they'll finally deliver it. So it's really annoying. I really want to continue this. This is a week that I have a vacation and that I would be able to do a lot of work because I have a lot of free time. And if it was up to me, I would be building Legos all week, but I can't do that. So I'm sorry to say, have a little bit of patience until the orders come in and I'm finally able to make my video. I'll make it as soon as I possibly can, the moment that I have my orders in, and then you'll see it appear on my channel. So subscribe to my channel and ring the bell to know when I finally have the orders in and I can finally do another Lego update. And until then, may the force be with you.